Hi guys, so for PSHE this term we are thinking all about relationships. So our first session today we are thinking about what constitutes, so what it means to have a healthy relationship. And for all of these sessions, for our next 3 PSHE sessions, we are going to be linking it back to our driver text of Peter Pan. So if you've not had chance yet, go back, have a listen to the story, start to understand those characters, because they're going to be what underpins all of our sessions, okay? So we need to have an understanding of those characters and how they feel towards each other. So for today's session, we are thinking about healthy relationships. So relationships can be lots of different things. You can have friendship, you can have, as you get older, romantic relationships, and you can also have something that's called an unhealthy relationship. So we're thinking about whether all relationships are good. Do they all have to be good? Are some of them quite bad? So we're going to think about that as well. So first, we're thinking about relationships as a whole. So relationships are defined as the way that two or more people feel towards each other and the way they act towards each other. So we're thinking about all those behaviours and all those feelings that underpin two people's connection to each other, essentially. So in terms of the story, there are lots and lots of different relationships going on. You have relationships between all of the characters that interact with each other. They all have a different relationship to each other, if that makes sense. So every time you interact with somebody and somebody new comes into your life, you then form a relationship with this person, and as time goes on, this relationship can build and this relationship can change. So that's something we're really going to think about in terms of our story. But before we go on to the story and the characters, we're going to think about the difference between a healthy relationship and an unhealthy relationship. Because like I said before, not all relationships are good relationships. So what I've done is, after this video, I'm going to put on a word bank of words, and they all describe feelings and behaviours towards someone that you can have in a relationship. And all I want you to do, so for your first task, all I want you to do is look at those words. So we've got words like control, power, fairness, loving. I want you to look at those words, and I want you to make me a table with 2 columns. I want one column to be healthy and one column to be unhealthy. And all the words you think describe healthy relationships or a good relationship, I want you to put in the healthy column. So for example, the word loving. Loving is a word you describe a healthy relationship as. So all the healthy relationship words into the healthy relationship column. And then all the unhealthy relationship words, so if we're thinking back, like the word power, is power something you'd really want in a healthy relationship, so a good relationship? Can a good relationship be formed on power? That's something you really need to think about. And then all those words that you think, actually, that doesn't sound like a good thing to have in a relationship. That's not something I'd have in my friendship with my friends. There's no power within that. We're all equal. We're all treated fairly. If you think, actually, that's not a good thing, then pop it in the unhealthy relationship column. So we're thinking about what makes a good relationship. So a healthy relationship where everyone's happy and everyone's treated fairly, and there is mutual respect and mutual love between people. And then an unhealthy relationship where things aren't quite as nice. So there's a bit of a power balance going on between the 2 people involved. It might be 2 people, there might be more than 2 people. But we're thinking about what makes a good relationship, so a healthy relationship, and what makes an unhealthy, so a bad relationship. Your second job for this session is, now that we've sort of explored this idea of healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships, I want you to try and put that towards the text, okay? So I want you to pick out some characters and I want you to make a relationship web. So I will show you the one I've done. Yours is going to look so much better than this because you're going to have lots of time to make one, and you can put all the characters in there, okay? But just to help you understand, so this is my relationship web. I've only got 3 characters in there at the minute, so I've got Wendy, Peter Pan and Tinkerbell. So all you're doing is you are going to pick characters, you're going to draw them. I've just wrote their names, but you will draw them. It's because I'm rubbish at drawing and you'd have no idea who these people are. But you're going to be amazing and you're going to draw me some lovely, lovely pictures. Okay, so you're going to draw the characters and then you're going to think about their relationship to each other. So as you can see, so for example, between Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, I've got two different arrows, okay? So my arrow, my purple arrow that goes from Peter Pan to Tinkerbell, I was thinking about, well, how does Peter Pan see their relationship? So what does he get out of that relationship, if that makes sense? So what are his feelings towards Tinkerbell? And then I thought back to my word bank, and I thought actually control is a really good word to describe their relationship, because if you think about it, Peter Pan's in control of Tinkerbell. So for Peter Pan, I've done an arrow to Tinkerbell and I've wrote control because I thought that was quite a good word that sums up his relationship to Tinkerbell. And then I thought, I can't really use control to describe how Tinkerbell feels about Peter Pan because she's not the person in control in that relationship. So I've sat back and I thought, well, actually, she doesn't feel the same way that Peter Pan feels. So I've done an arrow from Tinkerbell back to Peter Pan. So that's my red arrow. And I've wrote the word jealousy because I thought that was quite a nice word to describe how I think she might feel about Peter Pan. And obviously, just to help, I've shown you, so I could go from Peter Pan and I could go to Wendy next, and I could think about, well, how does Peter Pan feel about Wendy? How does Wendy feel about Peter Pan? I could also do an arrow from Wendy to Tinkerbell, and then an arrow back from Tinkerbell to Wendy to help describe their relationship as well, okay? And what I want you to do is I want you to start maybe with 2 or 3 characters and then start to build on it. So we've got lots of characters, even in just the beginning of the story. You've got Peter Pan, you've got Wendy, you've got Tinkerbell, you've got Wendy's brothers, you've got Wendy's parents. So they are all characters that you can add onto your web and you can link them up to other characters. So for example, if I did Wendy's parents, even though they may never meet Peter Pan, have a think about how you think they feel about it, how they feel about Wendy leaving with Peter Pan, okay? And think about how Wendy's relationship with her parents, so she has quite a healthy relationship with her parents. There's lots of love there, there's lots of respect there. So you can add in Wendy's parents and you can use some of the words that we used in our table for healthy relationships, and you can use those to help describe their relationship between Wendy and her parents, and the same between like Wendy and her brothers. Obviously you could do like Wendy's brothers and Peter Pan because obviously they talk to each other, they have sort of a relationship, so think about how that is as well. So I want you to see how many different characters from the story so far you can add into this relationship web. And what I want you to think about is whether they are all healthy relationships or unhealthy relationships. Like we've already said, the words that I used to describe Peter Pan and Tinkerbell's relationship were quite unhealthy ones. So they were ones that I would have put in my unhealthy column, so control and jealousy. So have a go through, add in the characters, and have a look at whether all the relationships in the story are healthy relationships, so good relationships, ones that you'd really like to have, something you'd look forward to having, or if they're unhealthy relationships, a bit like Tinkerbell and Peter Pan's, where there's a bit of a power struggle between them. That's it. So your 2 jobs that you should have done by the end of this session is your table for unhealthy and healthy relationships. So going back to that word bank that was on just before this, thinking about whether whether words that describe healthy relationships or words that describe unhealthy relationships. So once you've done that, you can then use those words to help build your relationship web. And remember, your relationship web, you need to draw the characters and you can write their names underneath to help you remember who they are. So draw those characters and think about the relationship between the characters. Remember, you can have more than one arrow. So like with Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, you could have an arrow going from one character to the other, explaining how they feel. And then if you think, I don't think it's the same both ways, you can have an arrow going back to that character and then using that to describe how the other character feels. I hope that makes sense, guys. Good luck.